Hi guys, Andrea from Ready Real Estate here, and today we're going to talk about how to write the addendum for sale of other property by buyer, or more commonly known as how to write an offer with a contingency. You would use this addendum when the buyer has to sell their home before they can buy the new one that they're looking to buy. It's for use when the buyer can't pay two mortgages or they don't want to. It's actually a very common issue when you're helping buyers. That's why it's important to know how to fill this out. So the first step is you would just write a 1 to 4 family contract just like you normally would, and then on page 7 you check the addendum for sale of other property by buyer, and then you'll add the addendum. The address of property is the property that they are looking to purchase. And then in paragraph A, that's the address of the property that they need to sell. Usually it's the home that they're living in. The date has to be sooner or the same as the closing date in paragraph 9 of the 1 to 4 family contract. So if their existing property that they need to sell is already under contract, you could put that close date in that blank. But if it's not under contract, you're going to have to use your best guess. And you'll need to make it far enough out to give the property time to sell and close, but not far enough out that you scare the sellers and prevent them from accepting the contract. Paragraph B gives the number of days that the buyer has to remove the contingency if the seller accepts a backup offer. So typically you'll put 3 days in here. Sometimes the seller might ask you to put 2 days. Sellers always want fewer days. But basically that's the amount of time that your buyer has to decide either to move forward with it. Perhaps they're able to qualify for 2 mortgages, and even though they didn't want to, they can, and that means they're going to go ahead and purchase that property, and they put down additional earnest money in paragraph C we'll get to, or they will have to terminate the contract and allow the sellers to move on to the backup contract. If the buyer wants to stay on and waive the contingency if the seller had received a backup offer, then paragraph C provides for those terms. The buyer has to deposit additional earnest money. It can be the same or less as the original earnest money in the 1 to 4 family contract. Obviously, if you're a buyer's agent, you're going to try for less earnest money, and if you're a seller's agent, you're going to try for more. But do not leave blank. Paragraph D means that if your buyer is unable to close because they didn't get the money from the sale of their property, then the buyer will be in default. And at that time, then the seller might exercise remedies in the default paragraph of the 1 to 4 family contract. And paragraph E just simply means time is of the essence. And that's the addendum for sale of other property by buyer. So make sure your buyers sign it, and then make sure you check the box for addendum for sale of other property by buyer with the 1 to 4 family contract, and make sure you submit it to the sellers at the same time that you submit your offer. Now I'm going to show you what happens when the sellers get another offer, also called a backup offer. If the sellers receive another offer, the listing agent will send the buyer's agent a notice regarding contingency under addendum for sale of other property by buyer. And the first part will just be the seller's names and the buyer's names and concerning the property at, and that'll be the subject property that the buyers are trying to buy. And then the sellers will give the buyer some options. They will, number 1, let them know that they've received a written offer, has to be written in writing, to purchase the property. The buyer can either waive the contingency and deposit that additional earnest money, or if the buyer is unable to waive the contingency, meaning if the buyer is unable to qualify for a second mortgage or doesn't have cash somewhere in the bank, that they will have to terminate the contract and they will receive their earnest money back. The bottom part of the same notice is where the buyer will respond to the seller. So box number 1, the buyer waives the contingency and deposits the additional earnest money. Or box 2, the buyer is terminating the contract and they would like to receive their earnest money back. Have your buyers sign it and return to the listing agent. If the first buyers elect to terminate, then the sellers will send the new buyers a notice to buyer of removal of contingency under addendum for backup contract, but this is covered in my video for backup contracts. So that's it, and hopefully this helps you fill out the addendum for sale of other property by buyer.